In a distant galaxy, far beyond Earth's reach, there was a planet named Iridian, home to a species known for their intelligence and beauty. Among them, the royal family was respected above all others. Their customs were ancient, and their ways of living were strict. The princess of this world, Zaira, was a figure of immense power and grace. Her presence alone could command respect from anyone, yet there was a mystery surrounding her that no one dared to question. Zaira had always worn a mask. No one, not even her closest advisors, had ever seen her face. It was part of the royal tradition, a sign of dignity, power, and mystery. The mask was crafted from a rare metal found only on Iridian, and it shimmered in the light, reflecting the colors of the planet's twin suns. Her people had come to admire her strength and beauty, but the mask was something that made her unapproachable. She was more of a symbol than a person, a living legend whose true self was hidden from the world. For the past few months, a human diplomat named Marcus had been stationed on Iridian, sent to negotiate trade agreements and improve relations between Earth and the alien planet. His job was important, but it was far from easy. The language barrier was the least of his problems. The real challenge was understanding the complex and ancient customs of the Iridian people. He had encountered Zaira only a few times in official meetings, and each time he had been captivated by her presence, though he had never once seen her face. Marcus had heard rumors about the princess, whispers among the other diplomats, and even some of the Iridian servants who worked in the palace. They spoke of how beautiful Zaira must be, and how her mask only added to her allure, but no one knew for sure. In truth, no one had ever dared to ask. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting with the royal council, Marcus was invited to a private gathering at the palace. It was rare for a human to be invited into the royal quarters, but the Iridian people seemed to trust him, at least on some level. Zaira, for reasons Marcus couldn't understand, had requested that he attend. When Marcus arrived at the palace, he was escorted to a small, elegant room at the heart of the royal chambers. The room was dimly lit by candles and large windows that overlooked the vast city below. Outside, the twin moons of Iridian cast a gentle glow on the landscape. The princess was seated by the window, her back to him. As always, she wore her mask. "Marcus," Zaira's voice was soft yet powerful. "Please take a seat." Marcus obeyed, though his mind raced with questions. He had been given no explanation for this private meeting, and the uncertainty made him nervous. He sat down across from her, his eyes never leaving the shimmer of the mask. For a moment, there was silence. Marcus tried to focus on the task at hand, wondering if there was something urgent he needed to discuss with her. But the princess's presence was almost overwhelming. She had a way of commanding attention without saying a word, just by being there. "I've called you here for a reason," Zaira finally spoke, turning slightly to face him. "There are things about my people, my world, that you don't understand. I fear it is time you knew the truth." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. What could she mean by that? What truth was there to reveal? His mind began to race again, but before he could speak, Zaira stood up from her seat and walked toward him. With one swift movement, she reached up and gently removed the mask from her face. For the first time since he had arrived on Iridian, Marcus saw the princess's face. Her skin was a soft, pale shade of blue, unlike anything he had ever seen. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, their color a deep violet that seemed to shimmer in the low light. She had high, elegant cheekbones and full lips, but it was her eyes that captivated him the most. They were filled with a deep sadness, as if the weight of the universe rested upon her shoulders. The mask, once a symbol of power, now lay forgotten on the floor between them. Marcus didn't know how to react. He had expected her to be beautiful, yes, but this was unlike anything he had ever imagined. She was stunning, but in a way that was otherworldly, something that couldn't be fully grasped with mere words. Yet, there was something else. In her eyes, vulnerability. "Do you still see me the same?" Zaira's voice was barely above a whisper. "Can you still love me like this?" Her question hung in the air, the silence that followed it deafening. Marcus could feel his heart beating faster. His mind scrambled for an answer, but he wasn't sure what the right one was. He had never considered the idea of love in this way. He had admired her from afar, sure, but could he love her for who she truly was? Could he look beyond her alien appearance and see her as the person she wanted to be seen as? He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't sure what she was asking of him. Zaira's gaze softened, and she sat back down, a look of quiet resignation settling over her face. "I didn't expect an answer right away," she said, her tone growing distant. "It's just, I've lived my whole life behind this mask. I've never let anyone see me for who I truly am. I thought maybe you might understand." Marcus finally found his voice. "I don't know if I can love you the way you want me to, Zaira, but I do admire you, more than you know. You're unlike anyone I've ever met, and that's what drew me to you in the first place. But I don't know what love means here, on your world. It's different from what I understand." Zaira nodded slowly, as though his words had confirmed something she already knew. "I don't know what love is either, Marcus. I've been told it's a weakness, something that makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability has no place in a royal like me." She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I think deep down I've always wanted it. I've always wanted someone to love me for who I truly am, not for the mask I wear or the title I hold." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Marcus could feel the weight of her words, the longing in her voice. It was a feeling he knew all too well. Love was something he had only ever dreamed of, something that seemed impossible to attain in a world so different from his own. But here, in this moment with this alien princess, something was stirring inside him. He had no answers to her question, no promise he could make. But he knew one thing for sure. His feelings for her had deepened in that single moment, seeing her without the mask. She was no longer just a mysterious symbol of royalty. She was Zaira, a woman with her own hopes, fears, and desires, and that in itself was enough to make his heart race. Zaira, noticing the quiet change in him, smiled softly. It was the first genuine smile he had seen from her. For the first time, she looked truly at peace, as though she had finally taken off a mask of her own. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me." Marcus could only nod. There were no words that could fully capture the complexity of this moment. All he could do was sit there, in the presence of the most powerful being he had ever met, and hope that somehow, in some way, they could find a way forward, together. The days that followed the princess's revelation were filled with uncertainty and confusion. Marcus had always known that his time on Iridian was temporary, that his role as a diplomat was just a job, a mission to strengthen relations between Earth and this alien planet. But now, after seeing the princess's true face, everything had changed. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about the question she had asked. "Can you still love me like this?" It lingered in his mind, echoing through every quiet moment and every conversation. Zaira's face haunted his thoughts, not because of her alien appearance, but because of the vulnerability in her eyes. She had revealed a part of herself that no one on Iridian had ever seen, and Marcus knew that trust like that was rare, especially for someone of her power and status. In the days after that night, their meetings had become more frequent. Zaira, though still the royal princess, seemed to carry herself differently. Her once imposing presence had softened, and Marcus noticed the way she looked at him. There was something new in her gaze, a kind of quiet hope that he would be the one to see her for who she truly was. But the pressure of her position, the weight of her royal duty loomed over them both, reminding them that their connection, no matter how real, was still fragile. One afternoon, Marcus was summoned to the palace again. This time, there was no mask, no grand ceremonies. The invitation simply read, "Meet me in the gardens." He didn't know what to expect, but he had learned by now that Zaira's world was full of surprises. When he arrived, he found her standing by a beautiful fountain, her back to him as she stared at the flowing water. Her long, dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and the gentle breeze caught the edges of her gown. She looked, for the first time, like a woman at peace. "Marcus." Zaira's voice was calm but full of something else, something unspoken. She turned to face him, and he noticed that she wasn't wearing the mask, but neither did she look as though she was trying to hide anything. There was a certain confidence in her now, as if, by removing the mask, she had taken control of her own narrative. "I wanted to talk to you about something." He nodded, stepping closer. The tension between them was palpable, but it wasn't the kind of tension he was used to. There was no formal agenda today, no official business. This was just two people, sharing a moment in time. "What's on your mind?" he asked. Zaira glanced down at the ground, as though choosing her words carefully. "I don't know if you—" The days after their conversation in the palace gardens were a mixture of calm and uncertainty. Marcus found himself thinking about Zaira constantly, and each day he spent with her deepened his feelings. They had come to know each other on a level that neither of them had anticipated. The barriers that had once separated them, her royal status, his role as a diplomat, had slowly begun to fade away, replaced by something real, something neither of them had ever expected. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when both of them would pull back, unsure if they were truly ready to trust each other completely. But those moments were always brief. They were both learning to open up, to be vulnerable, and to see beyond the masks they had worn, both literal and figurative, for so long. One evening, as they walked through the royal gardens together, Marcus couldn't help but notice how much Zaira had changed in such a short time. She seemed freer now, more confident in herself. The tension in her shoulders, the weight of her royal duty had eased slightly. It was as though, by simply allowing herself to be seen for who she truly was, she had begun to let go of the expectations that had shaped her life for so long. "Marcus," Zaira said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "There's something I want to show you, something I've kept hidden for most of my life." Marcus turned to face her, curious. "What is it?" Zaira hesitated for a moment, looking around as if checking to see if anyone might be watching them. When she saw that they were alone, she smiled, a secretive, almost playful look in her eyes. "Follow me." She led him through the winding paths of the garden, past rows of flowering plants that shimmered in the soft glow of the twin moons. The palace grounds were a beautiful sight at night, the air thick with the scent of flowers and the sound of distant waterfalls. It was a place of peace, a world apart from the pressures of politics and royal duties. They reached a secluded area, hidden away from the main pathways. There, in a quiet corner of the garden, stood an ancient tree, its trunk wide and gnarled, its leaves a deep shade of green that seemed to glow softly in the moonlight. Beneath the tree was a small bench, surrounded by a ring of stones, each one carved with intricate patterns. It looked like a sacred place, a place where few had ever been allowed. Zaira sat down on the bench, patting the spot next to her, inviting Marcus to join her. "This is where I come when I need to be alone," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the tree. "When the pressure of my position gets to be too much, when I need to think, I come here. It's the only place I can truly be myself." Marcus sat beside her, feeling a deep sense of privilege. He had been allowed into her most private sanctuary, a place that had been hidden from everyone else, even from her own family. It was a sign of trust, of something deeper than simple friendship. "This place is beautiful," Marcus said, his voice low. "I can see why it means so much to you." Zaira smiled, her eyes softening. "It's been my refuge for years. I don't have many places where I can just breathe, where I can forget about being a princess, a symbol of power, and just be Zaira. But even here, I can't fully escape who I am. There's always someone watching, always someone expecting something from me." Marcus looked at her, sensing the weight of her words. "You don't have to carry that weight alone, you know. You don't have to be the princess all the time. Zaira turned to him, her eyes searching his face as if looking for something she hadn't yet found. I wish it were that easy, but I've spent my whole life being molded into something I wasn't ready to be. The people of Iridian don't just see me as Zaira. They see the princess, the heir to the throne. They don't care about my thoughts, my feelings. They care about what I can do for them, what I can give them. I've never known love like that. The kind of love that accepts me for who I am, not for what I represent. Marcus felt a surge of empathy for her. He knew what it was like to be defined by other people's expectations. Back on Earth, he had spent his whole life trying to meet the standards set for him by his family, by society. But it had always felt hollow. He had always felt like there was something more he could offer, something more to who he was than what people saw on the surface. I don't care about your title, Zaira, Marcus said, his voice steady and sincere. I care about you, the person you are behind the mask, the person you've been hiding for so long. I don't care about your throne or your kingdom. I care about you, your thoughts, your dreams, your fears. That's what matters to me. Zaira was silent for a long time, her gaze turned inward, lost in thought. Marcus could see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between the world she had been raised to lead and the person she longed to become. She was caught between two worlds, two identities, and she wasn't sure which one to choose. I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can let go of the weight of being a princess, of being this symbol for my people. I've spent my whole life pretending, Marcus, pretending that I was okay, pretending that I was strong enough to carry the world on my shoulders. But now that I've let my guard down, now that I've shown you who I really am, I'm afraid. Marcus reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You don't have to pretend with me, Zaira. Not anymore. You don't have to carry the weight of your world alone. I'm here, and I won't let you go, no matter what. Zaira looked down at their joined hands, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was seen. Not as a princess, not as a ruler, but as Zaira, the woman with hopes and fears, with dreams and desires just like anyone else. She felt a warmth spread through her, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in so long. I wish I could believe that, she said softly, her voice trembling. But I've been let down so many times before. I've trusted people, and they've always betrayed me, always used me for their own gain. How can I trust that you won't do the same? Marcus squeezed her hand, his grip firm yet gentle. I won't betray your trust, Zaira. I promise. You can trust me. Tears welled up in Zaira's eyes, but she didn't look away. She let the tears fall freely, not caring for once if anyone saw. She was tired of holding everything inside, tired of pretending to be perfect. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel. I don't know what love is supposed to feel like, she whispered, but when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally able to breathe, like I can be who I really am, without fear. Marcus wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek, his heart swelling with emotion. That's what love is, Zaira. It's not about titles or appearances. It's about being able to be yourself, to share your true self with someone, without fear of judgment. Zaira smiled through her tears, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone, like there was someone who truly saw her for who she was, not just as a princess, but as a woman. And that, more than anything, gave her hope for the future. I'm not sure what the future holds, she said quietly, but I want to find out with you. I want to know what it's like to love and be loved, without fear. Marcus nodded, his eyes filled with determination. Then we'll figure it out together. As they sat there in the quiet of the royal gardens, the bond between them grew stronger. The path ahead was uncertain, and there were still many challenges to face. But in that moment, under the stars, they both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The days that followed Zaira and Marcus's heart-to-heart conversation in the garden were filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The trust between them had deepened, but so had the stakes. Zaira was no longer the distant royal figure she had once been to Marcus. She had become someone he cared about deeply. And she, too, had begun to realize that the connection between them was not just the result of their shared experiences, but something much more profound, something that might change both of their lives forever. However, the path forward was anything but easy. Zaira had shown Marcus a side of herself that no one else had ever seen. But now the true challenge lay in what happened next. Her world, her people, would never allow her to live freely as a woman, separate from the role she was born into. There were centuries of tradition and expectations binding her to a future she hadn't chosen. And Marcus, as much as he wanted to support her, knew that the weight of those expectations would soon come crashing down on them both. It all began one morning when Zaira summoned Marcus to a private meeting. He arrived at the palace early, as always, and was greeted by one of the palace servants who led him to a quiet room near the royal chambers. As he entered, Zaira was already seated by the window, her back to him. Her posture was tense, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't turn to face him right away, and for a moment Marcus thought that maybe she had changed her mind about everything. The weight of her position, her royal duty, might have been too much for her to bear. "Marcus," she said quietly, her voice strained, "please sit." He obeyed, his heart sinking with concern. "Zaira, what's going on? You called for me, but you seem distant." Zaira turned to face him, her eyes troubled. "I have something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago." Marcus leaned forward, sensing the seriousness of the moment. "What is it? Whatever it is, you can tell me." She stood up. The tension in the royal chamber was thick. Marcus and Zaira stood side by side, the weight of the royal council's decision pressing down on them like a heavy stone. Zaira had made her choice, to live her life with honesty, to love Marcus, without the expectations of her royal title, but the consequences of that choice were now clear. She had been disowned by her own father and her people. Iridian's future, which had once seemed so certain, was now uncertain. Marcus felt a deep ache in his chest. He had always known the risks of getting involved with someone as powerful as Zaira, but nothing could have prepared him for the heartbreak of seeing her torn between love and duty. Yet, he couldn't help but admire her. She was strong, resolute, and she had chosen to be true to herself no matter the cost. "I'm sorry," Zaira whispered, her voice breaking as she turned to face him. "I never wanted this for you. I never wanted to drag you into my world and all its complications." Marcus reached out, cupping her face in his hands. Her skin was cool to the touch, but he could feel the warmth of her emotions radiating through her. "You didn't drag me into anything, Zaira. I made my choice the moment I saw you. I knew the risks. And now, I know what it means to truly love someone. I'm not going anywhere. Not without you." She smiled, though her eyes were filled with sorrow. "But you should go, Marcus. You can't stay here, not now. The council has made it clear. They will never accept me. I can't ask you to give up everything for me. You have a life to return to. Your people, your world, they need you." Marcus shook his head. "I can't just walk away from you, Zaira. I don't care about what my world thinks. I care about you. And if that means leaving everything behind, then that's what I'll do." The words hung in the air, and for a moment the reality of what they were facing became painfully clear. They were standing at a crossroads, with only one path leading forward, and it was an uncertain one. Zaira had been exiled from her kingdom, and Marcus, despite his feelings, was a human in an alien world. They were both outsiders now, but something inside Marcus stirred, a feeling that he could not ignore. He had come to Iridian to help foster peace between their worlds, but now, that peace seemed more fragile than ever. Zaira's choice, though brave, had set everything in motion, and he knew he couldn't let her face it alone. Days passed in a haze of confusion and uncertainty. Zaira spent most of her time in the private gardens, reflecting on her decision. She had always been taught that her duty to her people came first, but now she wondered if that duty had cost her the one thing she had always wanted: true freedom. Marcus, too, found himself questioning everything he had known. The council had made it clear that his presence on Iridian was no longer welcome. He had been accused of stirring trouble, of encouraging rebellion, but that was the least of his concerns. His biggest worry was Zaira. She had given up everything for the chance at happiness, but now she was facing an uncertain future. And so was he. One evening, Marcus found himself standing in front of the royal palace, gazing up at the towering structure. The light of the twin moons bathed the city in a soft glow, and the air was thick with the scent of alien flowers. He had been thinking about leaving Iridian, about returning to Earth, but the thought of leaving Zaira behind made his heart ache. He had made up his mind. When he entered the palace, he was greeted by one of Zaira's personal guards. The young man's face was grim, and he didn't need to say much for Marcus to know that something was wrong. "Is she all right?" Marcus asked urgently. The guard nodded, but there was something in his eyes that told Marcus this wasn't just a casual visit. "She's been summoned by the council. They are trying to get her to return to her role as princess, but she's refusing. She's not doing well, sir. We think she might be planning something drastic." Marcus's heart sank. He pushed past the guard, rushing toward Zaira's private quarters. The palace was quiet, the halls eerily still. When he reached her door, he didn't knock. He couldn't afford to waste time. He pushed it open and stepped inside. Zaira was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. Her posture was slumped, as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her shoulders. When she heard the door open, she didn't turn around immediately. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't be here, the council is watching." Marcus stepped forward, his footsteps firm and purposeful. "I don't care about the council, Zaira. I care about you. What are you planning to do?" Zaira turned to face him, her eyes red from crying. "I can't go back to them. I can't go back to a life I don't want. They want me to give up everything I've worked for, to pretend that I'm someone I'm not. I can't live like that anymore, Marcus." Her voice trembled with emotion, and Marcus could see the pain in her eyes. She was torn between the life she had known and the life she had always wanted. But now there was no way to go back. "I'm not asking you to go back, Zaira," Marcus said gently, walking closer to her. "I'm asking you to trust me. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. We don't have to be defined by what anyone else wants. We can create our own future." Zaira shook her head, stepping back as though his words couldn't reach her. "You don't understand, Marcus. I've spent my whole life preparing for this. I can't just throw it all away. I can't let my people suffer because of my choices." Marcus reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. "You're not throwing anything away, Zaira. You're choosing to be true to yourself, and that's the bravest thing I've ever seen. You're not alone in this." Zaira's eyes searched his face, as if looking for some sort of reassurance. And in that moment, Marcus knew that he couldn't let her carry the burden of this decision alone. If it meant giving up everything he had known, his career, his home, his world, he would do it. "I'm not leaving you, Zaira," Marcus said softly, his words unwavering. "I'll stay by your side no matter what happens. You don't have to face this alone." Zaira let out a shaky breath, her tears falling freely now. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, clinging to him as though he was her only lifeline. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean on someone, to trust that she wasn't alone in her pain. "I don't deserve you, Marcus," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Marcus shook his head. "You deserve everything, Zaira, everything you've ever dreamed of, and I'm going to help you get it." For a long while, they stood there in the quiet room, the weight of their situation hanging heavy between them. But despite the uncertainty, despite the turmoil that surrounded them, they knew one thing for certain. They had each other. Later that evening, Zaira made a decision. She would leave the palace. She would leave Iridian behind and find a new life. One where she could be free to be herself, without the weight of her royal title. Marcus stood by her side as she gathered the few things she would need for the journey ahead. "We don't know what the future holds," Zaira said, her voice steady. "But I know I can't stay here, pretending to be something I'm not." Marcus smiled gently, his heart swelling with pride. "Then let's face the future together, whatever it may bring." And so, with nothing but each other and a shared hope for the future, Marcus and Zaira left the palace, ready to face the unknown. The sun was setting over Iridian, casting long shadows across the royal gardens. But Marcus and Zaira were no longer in the palace. They had left the only home Zaira had ever known, the place where she had been taught that her destiny was to rule. But the weight of that destiny had been too much to bear. They were both running toward something new, something uncertain, but they were doing it together. Zaira was quiet as they walked through the streets, her hand tightly clasped in Marcus's. The people of Iridian had not forgotten her face, and whispers followed them as they moved through the city. The princess, now a commoner, walking alongside a human. Some stared with disbelief, others with curiosity, but none dared to approach. Zaira had always been a figure of power, a symbol of royal authority. But now she was just another person, trying to find a place in a world that had rejected her. Marcus noticed the way she held herself, her posture still regal despite the clothes of a commoner she wore now. She had always carried herself with an air of command, even when behind the mask. But now, without it, there was a new sense of vulnerability in her, and it pained him to see it. "Zaira," he said softly, his voice gentle. "Where do we go? Now, what do we do?" She stopped walking and turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his with a mixture of fear and hope. "I don't know, Marcus. I have no kingdom to return to, no throne to sit on. I've given it all up for love. But where does that leave us?" Marcus stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders, his thumbs gently brushing the soft skin of her neck. "It leaves us with each other. It leaves us free to make our own choices. We don't need a throne, Zaira. We need each other." She closed her eyes at his touch, feeling the warmth of his words, the sincerity in his voice. For so long she had been trapped in the expectations of her people, the weight of her royal duties suffocating her. But now, for the first time, she was free to choose her own path. "We'll figure it out together," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "It won't be easy, but I'm not going anywhere." Zaira opened her eyes, her gaze filled with gratitude. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Yes, you do," Marcus said, his voice firm.